Let's see what the stew has for us today.
Welcome to the Gnomecast, Gnome Stew's tabletop gaming advice podcast. Here we talk with the other gnomes about gaming things to avoid becoming part of the stew, so I guess we'd better be good. This episode is brought to you by awesome Patreon backers like the articulate Amadeo Rosa, the bodacious Ben Madden, and the genuine Greg Gordon. Today we have myself, Ange, along with Jared and Senda, and today we're going to talk about solo gaming. Before we dive into that main topic, though, let's ask our get-to-know a gnome question. Away from the gaming table, what do you spend the most time on related to gaming? Jared, I'm going to start with you.
See, this is like a softball question because
It really is.
Well, I mean, when it comes to like being on the Gnomecast, like I read and take notes on and review books, RPGs of all sorts. So that is mainly what I'm doing when I'm not playing games that is game related.
Yeah, I kind of threw this question in there without fully thinking about the people I was asking this question.
Well, just to be clear, also, Jared's reviews are top-notch.
They are.
Phenomenal.
They really
so, it's worth it. We appreciate you spending all of your time on that.
So how about let's phrase it this way. For your personal gaming, is there stuff you spend time on that's not related to actually being at the table itself? Besides, writing for Gnome Stew, doing your reviews.
So you're eliminating, other gaming responsibilities? Is that...
Yeah.
Okay.
Our side hustles. Because we make
hustles.
so much money from all of this.
Don't count.
Oh, goodness. I mean, I was going to say, if it's not, literally at the table, one of the things that I started doing a lot more in recent years is absorbing media in the genre in which I am about to run a game, so that I have all of the tropes and everything naturally rattling around my head a little bit more. And that's been even more hyper-focused with running Star Trek and literally rewatching Next Generation and DS9. That's not just the genre tropes, it is very specifically the Star Trek tropes that I've been revisiting in that case.
No, that makes a whole lot of sense. How about you, Senda?
Well, my original answer was podcasting, but then you changed the question.
I mean, podcasting counts. It's just, Jared's right. It's a real softball question.
Yeah, it is, because we all do a bunch of things that are gaming related that are not gaming. We do them very intentionally, though. They're
intentionally and intensely.
And intensely and pretty publicly. They're not hidden away at a table somewhere. So if I leave podcasting aside, then the thing that comes to mind for me is the last time that I really was able to engage in this was a letter writing game. So I really like when I have some sort of campaign, being able to engage with things that help me focus in on that character for that game over the long term. And sometimes games grab me like this and sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes I'm like, this game is amazing, but I just played at the table and that's fine. But sometimes, we did a letter writing game earlier this year and it started out and I was just writing letters. Cool. But I was also a magical cat. And so I eventually acquired things a whole bunch of wax, a wax seal that has a cat on it. I had to pick up a stamp that had a paw print because I was signing everything with paw prints. I designed my own stationery that went with her sort of witch Sona catness. And it was really just about that and what she was doing and had meaning in terms of why she would send that out, right? So it's fun when you get to explore the trappings of something. Or for example, when I know I'm going to LARP, I spend way too much time on my costume.
Wardrobe choices are important.
Wardrobe choices are important. And so with the letter writing game, the accoutrements were the written equivalent of that, right? So I have a lot of fun basically, determining how I think that person would present themselves to the world. And when I end up in situations where I can engage that, I have a lot of fun with it. And it will come as no surprise to anyone that one of my majors in college is theatrical costume design. So this comes from a place of long history of let's distill who this character is and then create the things that are how they present themselves to the world that show the world that that's who they are, right?
Well,
so that's a thing.
I think that follows through is that a lot of times you'll have hobbies and interests that aren't necessarily directly gaming related, but when you find ways to
crossover.
connect them to gaming, like, one of my
Yeah.
things that I tend to do is graphic design. If I
Yes.
don't have a decent character sheet, you will
Oh,
find me making my own.
I
You
have
know?
absolutely done that also. And like, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole at all because it will be a big thing with many people. And I'm aware of that. But let me tell you, there's this piece of Mac software that no one in the world uses called Numbers, and it is their equivalent of Excel. And the thing that it does better than any other spreadsheet software in the world is that you can have individual tables that you can just put wherever you want, but you can still have equations with them that they talk to each other, right? So when we start talking about self-calculating character sheets that are actually laid out as a page layout, oh baby, I have spent some time in there, because you just drop your images in wherever you want. You can take the backgrounds out of them, you can do whatever, and then you just put the tables over them wherever and put them however you. Oh, it's delightful.
I have
Anyway.
had people look at my GM notes that I put together for games I run, and they're like, "Are you like is this published? Are you taking this from something?" And like, no, these are just my notes. I need to make them
Cheat
pretty.
sheets, though, too. Cheat sheets.
Oh,
are
cheat
a
sheets.
thing,
Yeah, cheat
I
sheets.
like making cheat sheets pretty. Anyway,
I will admit also, it doesn't happen for every character. It doesn't happen for every game, but I have totally written short stories about my characters before. Like in our part-time gods game, I am playing the goddess of geekdom, and I said that she got her powers about 3 years ago from Bob. Bob was the previous god of geekdom. And I wrote a story about Bob basically meeting my character because he was at a con and sad because the world was changing and he couldn't keep up, and he knew it was his time. And then he sees my character defending a cosplayer who's getting harassed. And he's like, I'm
that's
gonna go
the
buy her a
one.
smoothie.
Yeah.
It's like these things that, make the game go a little further than just what's happening at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Writing a journal in character. I should try that sometime.
Oh. Yeah,
Hey.
maybe.
Hey, boy, do we have a topic for tonight.
Okay, so getting into the actual topic, gaming is absolutely a social hobby, usually enjoyed with other creative folks as you play and laugh together. Thing is, there's this something we've all come to face, face to face with over the past year. You can't be with your gaming group all the time or whenever you want, so we thought we'd chat about solo gaming.
You literally can't be face to face.
No.
We're face to face with the fact that you can't be face to face.
Yeah. But what do we mean by solo gaming? These are the things we do to entertain ourselves related to gaming, all the way from actual games meant to be played solo to other things like we just talked about. So let's talk about solo gaming. Jared, I'm gonna poke you first, because I seem to recall you saying you played a solo game recently?
Why, yes, I did. First off, before we get to the solo game I played recently, I would also direct anybody that wants to see an outline of another solo game that I did to look on Gnome Stew, where I did a 3-part article as I was playing through 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, which was really a lot of fun. And instead of just doing a regular review, I actually wanted to play through that. And that is a great game where you're basically playing through, you get turned into a vampire, and then you roll dice to move to a certain prompt. You answer that prompt, you check things off of your character sheet. Even if you try to be a nice person, eventually one of the prompts will tell you that you did something horrible, and you have to roll with it. So anybody that wants to see that series, that is up on Gnome Stew.
I think we'll put it in the show notes.
Indeed. But more recently, I recorded a playthrough that I did of Ironsworn, which is a fantasy game, and it is basically set up to where you can either play it solo, traditionally, or with no GM. And the way this works is the game has what's called an oracle, which you roll to see what your next circumstance is going to be. So if you don't know, like, what action do I need to take next to do this quest, you would roll and it would prompt you, and there's a bunch of tables, and it would say that, sometimes you can, some of the tables are really broad, like, you need to ask someone something. And then you just kind of roll with that decision. There are tables where it's like, who do I need to ask? And then you can just drill down on those until such time as you kind of have an idea in your head of what you want the story to be that you're progressing on. And a lot of that game, it's very similar to Powered by the Apocalypse, but it is actually like a d6 plus an attribute, and you roll 2 d10s, and if you roll higher than one of the d10s, you get a weak hit. If you roll higher than both, then you get a strong hit. And a lot of the story is controlled by progress tracks. You have progress tracks for the vows that you take, because adventurers in this setting make vows to say, I'm going to do X thing for you. And you roll to see the progress track. Combat is basically the progress track. And almost every one of those progress tracks, you can make a move to end the progress track early. Like, you don't have to fill it all the way to all 10 boxes. But when you roll, you're going to roll the 2d10 and measure your progress track against those 2d10 to see whether you got a weak hit or a strong hit to finish things off. So let's say after you just tag somebody a few times in combat dancing around them and you decide, I'm going to end this combat decisively, you roll those 2d10, but you only filled in 4 boxes. You're probably not going to end it as decisively as you thought it was going to. But it's nice that you actually get to make that decision. That's your call. Like, if you have just started to approach something, but you really want to take the off chance that you complete it, it's there. So I played through that one night when, unfortunately, Ange and all of us couldn't get together to play, and I ran through this whole storyline that I kind of had some ideas for, where I was saving a town's Yule time because I went back and looked up some Yule festivals where people would worry about the Night of the Wild Hunt, which was kind of associated with the Aurora Borealis. And the Night of the Wild Hunt, all of the restless dead would come wandering around. So I was like, okay, what else do they have? The town has a reindeer skull. The reindeer skull is part of this ritual that they need to perform to keep all of the hungry dead away, but someone stole it. So I got to save Yule by getting back a reindeer skull before the restless dead came into town and sucked all the warmth out of the people in the town.
It's a Christmas miracle.
It is a Christmas miracle. You did it. A cozy game for Christmas.
Well, I also got a permanent handprint on my face and, suffered serious ennui. But, in the end...
I mean, that sounds like Christmas.
Yes. But yes, that game is set up to do those sorts of things. So if you are interested in seeing it, Ironsworn is one I would definitely recommend to look at. Senda, what about you?
Oh boy. So the first one that I have to mention before I mention anything else is one that is still on Kickstarter, but I am super excited for. It is by Jian Shim, and it is called Field Guide to Memory. And the way that this game is set up to work, to my current understanding, and I am very excited about it, is it is going to be a journaling game, and it is obviously a solo game, but what will happen is starting in February, they're going to start emailing out the prompts. So you'll receive like these messages with like imagery and stuff about the accoutrement that you're dealing with to write about in your journal. And I am currently on a hunt to find the perfect field journal to write about my old mentor, the cryptozoologist who went missing 5 years ago and is obviously dead now, whose life and relationships I now have to untangle, which I am delighted to do. So I'm looking forward to February because I am very excited to play that game.
That does sound kind of awesome.
It's gonna be really cool, I think. And like, I really am on the hunt for, like, I need a journal for this game that feels both like field guidey and also sort of cryptozoology-y, like, and also like has some basic requirements, like is nice to write in and lays flat on the table and stuff. Like, I have some very specific thoughts on this, and I want to be able to put sketches and stuff in it. Like, I'm excited for it. So like, part of what I think is cool about solo gaming, and I think that maybe I just made this accidentally clear, and I think this is part of what you've come away with too, Jared, and especially you've been able to share on Gnomes too. And I actually have too with one other one I'll talk about in a second, is one of the things that you can walk away with from certain types of solo gaming is this really cool artifact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you made this thing.
Yeah.
You made a thing. You yourself did a thing and you have a thing, right? So, and that hasn't been my experience with every single game that I've solo gamed, but it has been with many of them, and I really enjoy that because I can go back to it. So, for example, there's sort of a solo game / ritual on itch.io called They Stole the Moon, which is very poignant, and it is about managing feelings of grief when you've lost someone important to you. And the author of the game had lost someone important, and I actually played it on the anniversary of my mother's death because I was kind of looking for something to, I don't know, pay some respects to that day and to feel like I had engaged in it in some way. And like, just by pure happenstance, this game fell across my Twitter feed that day. I went and bought it and I played it. And the very specific thing about this game is that you go through a bunch of steps that are kind of ritualized in terms of like thoughts and feelings and just writing things down, where you are playing both yourself but also in this other character headspace, so that you don't have to be like truly in a therapeutic self mode. Like, you're still kind of in a game space, or you can be as much as you want to be. But you end up drawing this circle and doing a lot of line connections across the circle until you basically come out with kind of a weird lopsided mandala kind of situation. And every time you do it, it would be different, right? Like, mine won't look like yours, won't look like Jared's. Like, it will be completely different. But the end result is that you have this like circle of all of these connections that you take away with you from the game as actually kind of this comfort piece. That, like, the idea being there's kind of like this hole where, you know, someone is gone, and these are your thoughts and feelings and like love for that person, like all tied up into this little medallion almost. Just like, so that was a game experience that I don't think I could have had with someone else involved at the table. It was clearly very, very personal and is not something that I necessarily would have been able to do as a shared experience, which I think is one of the things that solo games can do, right? Is sometimes we can explore stuff in a solo game, especially in a written form, that we don't necessarily get the space or don't necessarily have the comfort to explore in a game with other people. And like, to take that one step further, I ended up taking that little medallion mandala style thing that I created and like painting it on canvas and like making it into a pretty thing. And now it actually hangs in my bedroom. And it's like really, really good. It was a wonderful experience that I walked away from, and no one else can experience that with me. But I have this cool like memory artifact from it, right? That it wouldn't be even recreated if I played the same game again. It wouldn't be the same. Anyway, I have many more things I can keep saying, but I feel like I've been talking a lot. So maybe let me just real quick touch on 2 more games that I just want to call out because they're super cool, and then I will be quiet.
Absolutely. Senda, we don't invite you on to the Gnomecast to be quiet.
I know, but sometimes I'm like, did I take up all of the airwaves or just 90% of them? It's all good. Okay, so another journaling one that I think is really interesting to play by yourself and to know that you don't have to share anyone is The Beast. And I don't know if you've heard of that one. 18 plus, please. It's erotic, to say the least, but it is a card prompt game. So you go through a series of card prompts and you answer them, and they are about the beast that you keep and go do adult things with. And what kind of creature that is, and like what you do with it. And so when I say 18 plus, I do mean 18 plus, but it's cool because you end up having to think about a lot of things you might not think about normally. It's one of those interesting games that walks the line of comfort and discomfort, but because you're playing with yourself, you get to modulate that really carefully, but you can also learn things about yourself, which is cool. So The Beast is a good one. There
Just
are
18 plus, folks.
18 plus. There are some brave souls who have shared this game, their playthroughs of this game on the internet. That is not me. But if you look out there, they exist, and they're pretty cool. And then the other one that I just wanted to call out is a game called Twain, which is absolutely beautiful and magical. It is not a journaling game, so you don't walk away with an artifact. I actually played it and recorded myself playing it, which was interesting because I just had to like speak all my thoughts out loud for She's a Super Geek. So you can listen to that episode, and I wrote about the experience on Gnome Stew, so we can put that in the show notes too. But so Twain is a really cool game where you have a twin and you haven't talked to them for a really long time, and you both used to do magic, but you stopped believing in it, and you're going to go meet your twin. So it's this really interesting game where you play tricks on your own mind. You figure out all the story stuff, you write down all the story stuff, so it's written down. And again, I will say this book is absolutely glorious. Like, there's a book form of it, but they sent me the fancy one. It came in like an envelope with like this fantastic, like printed on vellum, and like it just, oh, it was so beautiful. I don't even know if you can get that anymore now that the Kickstarter's over, but it was absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, so you fill in the backstory with prompts, and then you actually trick yourself into going to a public location. This is basically a solo LARP, right? You go to a public location to wait for your twin because you're going to meet them there. And so you actually go and experience the feelings of excitement at seeing them again, like the fear of what they might say because you had this falling out and you walked away from everything you used to do together and the magic. And, will they actually come? Won't they come? Because they didn't actually tell you they were going to be there. You just had a dream, right? Like that they were going to be in this place at this time. So you got to be there. But you're like so excited to see them again and so excited to maybe engage with this magic again. But like, you don't know what's going to happen. So it's like this really wild thing. And you do it to yourself, right? Like you psych yourself up. You go to a public place and then you just wait for someone that, like, intrinsically you actually know is, like, not coming, obviously, because they're not real. But that's not the point. Like, you're just having the emotions and experience of waiting. And you actually set a thing on your phone, like, you can text them, and you can text them messages, like, and stuff. They don't respond, obviously. But you text them, and then you set a timer on your phone to ring with your phone's ringtone. And that is the end of the game, is that they call you. And it is so cool. It's like such an experience to do. And I was like standing outside in a park in the cold, like waiting. Like having all of these feelings and stuff, and just was especially weird for me because I was also like mumbling, like talking them out to the microphone. And there were like people in the park with me, so that was a little weird, but anyway.
That's not the first time random strangers have thought gamers are weird. It's just probably one of the few times that one of them has been by themselves.
Right, because you are by yourself, which is the thing. But it is cool. So like I guess what I highlight in that is like there's the games that you end up with artifacts that are cool things that you've created for yourself. And then there are games that they all lead you through some kind of experience. So in my personal experience, most of the games that I've been playing have been things that end up being about self-exploration, which I just think is super cool because it's a thing that we can do by ourselves. And it's a good way to have some sort of introspection that is a little bit more directed and is fun because it has a story and stuff. And again, I'm really excited to play Field Guide to Memory because this thing looks amazing.
So, Ange, what have you done that has been something that I know you said you haven't solo gamed, but something you've done on your own?
I don't
know. I think writing backstory for your character or short stories,
True.
in my opinion, kind of counts.
I think it does because it's in a lot of what Senda was talking about. Those games are things that push you into exploration of, your psyche, different things you're looking at. And I tend to still very much enjoy investing in a character that I'm playing. And honestly, I mean, most of my brain space is taken up by gaming. Even if I'm not podcasting or writing for Gnome Stew or prepping for a game or playing a game, my brain is thinking about gaming. It's thinking about the characters that I play and all this, and like the act of sitting down and writing a short story for the character or just jotting down some background information for the character is another way to kind of get into that character's space and explore it a little further. Like I said, I don't do it with every. I don't end up with the artifact. I don't end up actually writing a thing down every single time, but I can tell you I'm always thinking
Mm.
about the characters I'm playing and their stories and the worlds they're living in and, that type of thing. And I do like the idea of, an actual mechanical way to play a game solo. My group is going to be starting a Star Wars campaign, and we're actually using the old West End Games D6 version that I guess bunch of not ancient times, but a while ago, like some fans did a revision of it. And in this revision, and I'm not sure if this was in the edition that they've taken most of the information for the game from, but in that is a solo adventure that you can take one of the templates, use that character, and walk through an adventure to be shown how the game is played. And I'm like, that's actually brilliant.
Yeah,
that is really good way to, teach a player how does this game work. And yeah, it doesn't have the give and take of interacting with the other players or interacting with the GM, but it still teaches you how the mechanics work, how you can fit into the setting and, all of that stuff. And I kind of wish more games did that.
I was gonna say I am terrible. I know there's D&D people that are much better at remembering what the actual editions were, but the Red Box basic set had a solo adventure in it too.
Yeah, and it's I wish that was in more games. You get a lot of games that have the, okay, we're gonna have 2 to 3 pages of people. We've written the story of people playing the game, and you kind of can see the give and take. But that a lot of people need to actually physically do the thing to learn how it actually works, rather than just seeing it, i.e., reading about it. I think we can acknowledge that there's a lot of things about gaming that we do on our own, in our own time and space, that aren't necessarily exactly related to what we end up doing at the table. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would also like to point out, since we all know the person that was primarily involved in this, Whirlwind Millionaire is another journaling game that you can play with yourself about someone that has won the lottery.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one.
So you may want to pick that one up as well.
Any last thoughts on solo gaming?
I have a last thought. My last thought on solo gaming is that it's something that people sometimes approach with trepidation or think that it is weird. Now, while we're all still living in like some level of isolation, is the perfect time to get over that and just try it. Because if you are bored, I promise these games are awesome and fun, and you will walk away with cool things that you can be like, look at this thing I did, and tell at least the internet about it. We will all be excited for you. That's my thought.
You'll be able to tell us again to our face someday.
Someday.
Any last thoughts from you, Jared?
The only other thing I was going to say is I really like Ironsworn, but if at some point you're interested in checking this out and it sounds cool, but fantasy isn't your thing, currently Sean Tompkins is working on Starforged, which is the science fiction version of Ironforge, which I don't know where you would get inspiration for a person swearing vows and traveling around the galaxy completing quests from in this day and age.
What?
I don't know, it's a mystery. But
oh, this is the way. So, I think we can wrap up and get out of here. This show is funded by our Gnome Stew Patreon. You too can become a Patreon backer by following the Patreon link on the Gnome Stew website to the Gnome Stew Patreon. This ad is brought to you by the Friendly Mirror. At a time when sometimes you have to figure out how to entertain yourself, we have the Friendly Mirror, a looking glass that makes you think you're hanging out with someone, even if it's just an annoying jerk who keeps copying everything you're doing in reverse. Okay, maybe don't do that thing. Anyway, if you're enjoying the Gnomecast, you'll probably like many of the other Misdirected Mark shows. Here's one to check out.
Misdirected Mark, the MMP guys go live every Tuesday evening at 8 Eastern to break down and get inside games, game mastering, playing games, and game design in an effort to entertain and inform you.
You can find all of us at gnomestew.com, at Gnomestew on Twitter, and Gnomestew on Facebook. Gnomes, where else can we find you on the internet? Senda, go!
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at IDELLAMITHLYNND, which is Idella Miffland. And you can also find me on Twitter at Pandas Talk Games. You can still find me at SAS Geek Podcast there, but gosh, we ended it. It's over. It's done.
Sad.
Well, no, it is a project completed.
Don't be happy it's over. Be happy it happened.
I am proud of it, and I am proud that we didn't let it pod fade by calling it, saying when it was ending, and pushing through and doing the thing. How about that?
Yeah, that is an important thing.
I'm gonna be honest. 5 years in podcasting years is like 100. So like, we did it for a while. Anyway, that was unrelated.
The archives are still there,
right?
They're still there.
You can go listen to me play Twain with myself.
You can go listen to me run masks.
Yes, it's great.
So good.
They're all still there. We're not taking them down. They're not going anywhere. Yeah. Anyway, cool. Hey, Jared, where can people find you on the internet?
Okay, you can find me at What Do I Know JR on Twitter. And if you want to look for my blog to read the things that I review outside of Gnomes Do, you can find that blog at whatdoiknowjr.com. And where can we find you at?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Orikes13, ORIKES 13. Although, as always, I warn you, Twitter is kind of dead because things aren't happening. But Instagram is mostly pictures of my cats. So you will like my cats, though.
They're very cute. They're good cats. They're good cats, Ange.
They're good cats. So, do you think we avoided the stew this week?
Just based on like actually wrapping up at something of the right time-ish, I feel very accomplished.
Also, I think in the spirit of this being a solo gaming discussion, we should each get to decide personally whether we go in the stew or not.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That is a good choice. That is a good...
We might have to roll for it, just individually.
Yeah.
And then journal about our experience of the descent into the stew.
Gnomecast is hosted by Misdirected Mark Productions, the media arm of Encoded Designs.